Breaking news, another NFL head coaching job has been filled. The Ravens announcing that they have hired Jesse Minter, who's been the defensive coordinator with the Chargers, and he has experience in Baltimore with the Ravens. He was an assistant under John Harbaugh from 2017 to 2020. He then joined Jim Harbaugh's staff at Michigan as defensive coordinator before taking the same role with the Chargers in 2024. Let's get our Jonathan Jones in here. JJ, help us make sense of this, because they move on from John Harbaugh, but now they're bringing back one of his former assistants, and he's a defensive guy, and we were under the impression, and you've reported, that Lamar Jackson was going to have a lot of input. Do you believe he had input on this?
I do think that he had some form of input on it, and we still are waiting to see what exactly Jesse Minter's offensive plan is going to be, the names that will trickle out for offensive coordinator. We'll hear more about those, I'm sure, as time moves along, but not a surprise that it's Jesse Minter with the Baltimore Ravens, especially when you consider the recent history, right? Just 2 years ago, Mike Macdonald seemed to be the next guy up with Baltimore, and the Seattle Seahawks struck, and they went and got him as their head coach. Now look at where Seattle is, just one game away from the Super Bowl with Mike Macdonald. And so the Ravens, after moving on from John Harbaugh, perhaps they had another Mike Macdonald in the building very recently in Jesse Minter. And then, of course, he goes on to the LA Chargers and has incredible success there. I think 5th in yards allowed, 9th in points allowed. And so they say, yeah, we want that guy. Young, right? This is a young franchise having moved to Baltimore. So I think this is only the 4th head coach that they've ever had, of course, Harbaugh being there for 18 years. And so they want someone that they can grow with. And this is something that I think this is the first hire we have seen in this cycle, Chris, where the guy's not a former head coach. We have 3 former NFL head coaches, Jeff Hafley, a former college football head coach at Boston College. And now we have our first-timer in Jesse Minter going to the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, how do you make sense of his rise at 42 years old now, mostly a college assistant coach, but did have that experience with the Baltimore Ravens from 2017 to 2020. How much do you think that had to do with this current Ravens regime going back to him and plucking him out of LA?
I think it had a lot to do with it. And when you look at the teams that are in the Final Four of this playoff tournament in the NFL, they have pretty good defenses. Some of them have pretty great defenses, right? So defenses, the old adage goes, wins championships. So the Baltimore Ravens feel that if we get a guy who's going to be able to coordinate a defense better than most, if not all, then we're going to have opportunities. So long as we have the MVP candidate and Lamar Jackson at quarterback. You got a couple more years left of Derrick Henry. We'll figure it out on offense. You know, a couple years ago, Chris, the idea was you want to get an offensive play caller at head coach because, man, if your OC's good, teams are going to come pluck him, and then you're going to be left every year or every other year trying to fill a very important position on your coaching staff. And then what we saw this past year, or really the last 2 years, is, no, we just want to find the best coach. We want to find the best leader of men. We want to find the best guy who can fill out the best staff, and we'll figure out the rest. And that is, I think, is what we are seeing with the Baltimore Ravens. I had been told as Jesse Minter pulled out of the Cleveland Browns search recently, and that may have been this morning, may have been last night, but either way, he had to decide between the Ravens and the Raiders. And so that was sort of the last team that was in the mix for Jesse Minter. And obviously he opted for Lamar Jackson for stability, continuity, and going back to what is familiar for him, having coached there a couple years ago.
Look, for Lamar Jackson to get over the hump, I would imagine that he would want a guy that he knows and could work well with as an offensive coordinator. Do you have any names out there that you think are in the running for this job?
Yeah, we'll still see. I mean, obviously, Lamar Jackson had a great working relationship with Todd Monken. It certainly seems that Todd Monken is either a candidate for the Cleveland Browns head coaching job or joining John Harbaugh in New York with the Giants. So I can't imagine that he would be a candidate to return to Baltimore. Crazier things have happened in the NFL. We've had 10 openings this cycle, a bunch of really great coaches who have been fired. So why can't someone do this right here? You know, you look around, Cliff Kingsbury is still looking for a job. Matt Nagy still looking for a job at offensive coordinator. Brian Daboll, obviously a top candidate with the Buffalo Bills at head coach, but he's a hot name at offensive coordinator. Joe Brady, hot name at offensive coordinator if he doesn't get the Buffalo head coaching job. So plenty of quality offensive-minded coaches who are out there who can be OCs, who can call plays for Lamar Jackson that Jesse Minter can work with. And so we'll certainly see as these days roll along who his guy ultimately is.
All right, the Ravens have announced it. Jesse Minter is their new head coach coming over from the Chargers, and a coach who has experience in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, even though he's on the defensive side of the ball, was with Lamar 2017 through 2020. And as Jonathan Jones just pointed out, it's the first time head coach that we have filling one of the spots. He's the fifth vacancy that's been filled. Jeff Hafley hasn't been an NFL head coach, but he has been a head coach at the college level. Jesse Minter, 42 years old, getting his first head coaching job, replacing John Harbaugh, who he coached under in Baltimore. Much more on this coming up. We have Pete Prisco and Lige Douzable on the other side to react to the Ravens hiring Jesse Minter. Continuing our breaking news coverage with Lige Douzable and Pete Prisco, as the Baltimore Ravens have hired Jesse Minter as head coach. They announced that this evening around 5:20 Eastern Time. Minter, a former Ravens assistant in 2017 through 2020 under John Harbaugh, then went and worked for Jim Harbaugh as defensive coordinator at Michigan, and then with the Chargers in the 24 and 25 seasons as defensive coordinator. But most of his career has been at the college level. Minter, 42 years old. Let's bring in Lige Douzable and Pete Prisco. We had Jonathan Jones on earlier, Pete, and he was not surprised at all by this hire. I think some on the outside might be, just because it's, this is Lamar Jackson, and you're thinking, well, maybe he gets an offensive guy in there. What do you think of this hire?
Oh, look, they know him. I mean, he's part of the family. He's part of the Ravens tree, and I think Steve Bisciotti, the owner, and Eric DeCosta, the general manager, know him very well. And so it's familiarity sometimes to these organizations, and we always hear about the Ravens way and how the Ravens do things. Well, this is one of those situations where you reach back to one of your own. I like it. I think he's a really good football coach. Now, how is he as a leader of men? Remember, Mike McDonald was one of those guys that was on that staff as well back in the day, and he left and went to Seattle. We know what he's done. So I think they're trying to replicate that, hopefully replicate that with Jesse Minter.
Yeah, Pete, this is a guy that has bided his time, worked his way up, you alluded to it. This is a guy that most of his career has been on the college ranks, but his first NFL experience was with the Baltimore Ravens. So to Pete's point, he has experience with Baltimore. This is a guy that elevated that Chargers defense. He's not only had success at the college level, but the NFL level as well. And he's the attention to detail type guy. So I really do like this hire because he's familiar with the building. He's familiar with the people in it. But also, this is a guy that's really worked his way up and deserves this opportunity.
Now, Lige, when you've seen him defensively with the Chargers, as a defensive guy, what do you like that he does on that side of the ball?
His players fly around when you watch it on tape, but everything is from the top down. The thing that I really love about him, Pete, is that they don't give up explosive plays. He makes you earn it the hard way. You have to have long, tedious drives where you don't mess up and have a false start, or you don't have a holding penalty that pushes you back. They're not going to beat themselves, and that is something that's going to be harped on when he goes to Baltimore. We're not going to beat ourselves. We're not going to have coverage busts. We're not going to let people throw the ball over our head. So I think this is a really good hire. This is one of the young budding stars in the NFL, and to your point, Has, earlier, again, has had a lot of success in college, but has also had success at the NFL level.
Well, two things will define his tenure. One will be, can he rush the passer? And that's been a problem for the Ravens for a while. They keep drafting guys, and they just haven't been able to rush the passer well enough. He did a great job with the guys he had with the Chargers. I think that's going to be important to develop, draft a guy, find Mike, maybe get Mike Green going next year to a guy who can really change the game with his ability to get off the edge. So I think that's important. Number two, who's his coordinator on offense? I mean, look. Yeah. This is the key hire for any defensive coaches. Who's going to be your coordinator? What offense are you going to run? What does Lamar Jackson think of it, and what does he look like in that offense? I think that's the number one hire for Jesse Minter. Look, I think defense won't be a problem. I think he can lead the room. I don't think that's going to be a problem. But the problem will be if he doesn't hire the right offensive guy for Lamar Jackson.
All right, so Pete, lay out that blueprint. I mean, the guy that you think that Baltimore, not necessarily a name, but just a kind of coordinator that Baltimore should go after and a kind of offense that Lamar Jackson should run.
Well, I think he should look at where Mike McDonald has done in Seattle. I mean, look what he's done with Kubiak and the way they run the ball. And everybody's